Hi, Miss Sittler. So I couldn't figure out how to do the screencastify thing, so I'm just going to show you my test corrections from my notebook. For the first question I missed, it was a multiple choice one about students and a survey that they took at the beginning of the school year, and it was basically about dividing it up into quantitative or categorical, categorizing each question as categorical or quantitative. So here's my work for this one. Basically, I wrote them down, each thing down, number of pets, number of people, what grade they were in, subject, college, and I wrote them down, and then I wrote down what I thought each one was. In my first attempt at this on my test, I said that number of pets and number of people were continuous variables, which isn't true. I later realized, obviously, because continuous would mean that that number was infinite and not like a singular number and would never be counted, or could never be counted. So I later, in doing my test corrections, I researched and went deeper into the definition of discrete and continuous so that I understood it better. I think I mainly just got confused. I was trying to move fast or something. And I figured out that the number of pets and people in a household are discrete because they're finite. You can count them, and that's what this kind of defines a discrete variable. So I decided that grade, subject, and college were categorical, which is what I had the first time, and then number of people and number of pets were quantitative and both discrete. And then the next question I had was about the NFL collecting health data and the percentage of NFL players that weighed between 155 and 310 pounds. So here's my work. I don't know if you can see it, but basically, in my mind, when I was first doing the question, I didn't think about how it was a summary of the data, not like the actual just the data from 5 players. So what I initially did was I knew that 155, 235, 245, and 310 was the range that they were asking for. So I did 4 over 5 and I got 80%, and then I just rounded it up. I don't know why. And that's what led me to the wrong answer, obviously. But then when I was reevaluating it, I realized that it was a summary of the data. So then I decided to find the median, so I knew what the center was. And then it made sense then to find Q3 and Q1 to know landmarkers of what percents I was at. And then it became clear that 310 was Q3, which meant that it was 75% of the data. And I knew that from 155, which was a starting point, to 310 was 75%. So therefore, the percentage of NFL players in that range was 75%. I think my main mistake with that was just I was moving too fast, or I just wasn't reading it well enough to understand that it was a summary and that I had to kind of go deeper than just the base level. And then once I did look at it again and take time, I realized that I needed to find the quartiles, not necessarily doing so much dividing. And then onto the true response. On number 1, I missed part C when I was describing the distribution. Basically, so here's my answer. I went into a lot more detail this time because when I looked back at my answer, I looked at it and it really wasn't saying much other than that the distribution of scores for students on the math test was just symmetrical and unimodal. I didn't really define the measures of center or the measures of variance, which I later found and then I later showed the median was 73 and the mean was 72.05, which shows that they're not very varied and they're not very spread out. And then the IQR was 12 and they only had one outlier at 40, which shows that there's very little variance with only one outlier. I just didn't go into as much detail as I should have, and I didn't explain why this showed symmetrical and unimodal distribution, and why the distribution obviously wasn't varied. I think that in my mind when I was doing it, I thought that like the stem plot kind of showed for itself, and obviously that's not what the question was asking me, and it asked me to describe, so I should have described more. I just didn't go into enough detail, and I didn't think I needed to, but then when I looked back at it, I was like, I don't know why I didn't do that. I just needed to work on defining them and reevaluating like how I define them. So I looked back at my answer, and I used some parts of my answer because it was correct, but I just went into more detail about it. And then number two, here's number two. It was about box plots, and basically what I ended up missing on this question was just how I described the distribution. And I think for me, what was hard about this one was I looked at it at the parallel, and it was kind of hard for me to look at it when it was parallel, and I needed it to be kind of horizontal so that I could see the distribution better. Maybe that's because I just did the homework like that. So then when I looked at it horizontally, I initially thought that they were not as similar as they actually are, because even though 2014 is right skewed and 2015 is left skewed, when you put them on the same playing field, when you look at their IQRs, they're actually pretty similarly distributed, just in different directions. And so when I initially looked at it, I just assumed that it was 2014 was really different than 2015, and I think I was really crunched on time at this point, so I just went with that thought, and I tried to manipulate the data to kind of show that, which obviously wasn't smart. And looking back at it, I'm not really sure why I did that. That's just kind of an error on my side, but I found an IQR that was similar from looking at the data, and it obviously shows that they're similarly distributed based on their variance measure of IQR, and that I was just incorrect on my reasoning because I think I was really rushing myself. And then number 3B was the last thing I got wrong. So here's all my work. Basically, in my first one, I did like the different types. I didn't do female and male on the bottom. I did education, environment, health, international aid, and other. And then I showed like female and male distributed throughout that, which could show the segmented bar graph, but doesn't really show the data as well as it could. And so when I was working on this problem, I tried it with females and males, and it shows the variance in the data between the two genders better, and it shows the distribution of organization choice for each gender better, because when it's reversed, it doesn't actually show the distribution as well. And the reason that I did the distribution the other way was because I was really short on time. I think I had 2 minutes left, and by doing it with the different types of organization on the bottom, I was able to do the math quicker, which allowed me to get the question done in time. And so I was pretty sure I got it wrong, obviously, because I knew that I didn't do it as long as I should have. I mean, I didn't do it the correct way, so when I went back, it obviously made more sense, and I'm happier with this answer. I didn't on my thing put what I got for each point, like I didn't know because I didn't get my test back, so I ended up just correcting the ones that you commented on my private comments afterward, and I hope that I did all of them that I got wrong. If I didn't, I can go back and redo it, or I hope I did it right, but anyways, thank you.